Thanks for tuning in to the Medevac podcast, powered by the Robert Irvine Foundation, whose mission is to support and strengthen the physical and mental well-being of our nation's heroes and their families. I'm one of your hosts, David Reid.
And I'm your other host, Christian Meyers. If you have not listened to Part 1 with Phil Stone, go back last week. Listen to Part 1. You can get the groundwork, learn a little bit about Phil, his time entering the Army, entering Special Forces. And today we're going to dive in a little bit deeper into some of your stories in Afghanistan, and we're going to talk about East-West Berlin as well. So, Phil, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for joining us today.
A lot in the reserves, a lot when I went to, so I got activated, we kind of skipped this, but in the 90s, 1995, 94 actually, we invaded Haiti. Mm-hmm. Peaceful invasion. Interesting read, not to go too much off the topic, but the guy, General Steiner, was the one that designed that invasion. And he's also the same guy that designed our invasion of Panama. So very heavily special operations, right? So Haiti, third group infiltrated 54 A teams at the onslaught. They put a team every 30 miles. Every village, 30 miles apart, they put an A team. You're not going to stick the 10th Mountain Division or the 82nd Airborne out in some tiny village away from nobody on their own, but let's stick A teams out there. So in 95, I got activated. That was October of 94. So in January 95, we got activated and we're replacing the team in third group. And I get down there and, it's not a war as, there's no IEDs and shootings, but it's definitely police type work where I've got a city, 100,000 people. I've got another city over here, 25,000. I got another city over here, 15,000, and we're in charge of everything.
Yeah.
And when I say we're, I mean 12 guys on a Special Forces ODA.
Yeah.
They give you our sector was like 60 square miles. They say, you guys are in charge of everything. And I'm bringing all that up because this is where I learned what to do for Afghanistan. So when I got into Haiti, I was like, same thing. We don't know shit about anybody. When it came to Afghanistan, we didn't know about the governors or these warlords or the tribes. We didn't know anything about anybody. And so I just used that. I went back to my old O&I days, and one of the things they'd had us done was here's an area study, and start going through your area study, and you're not going to learn it all in one day. You got to pick several portions of it. Like one day you may, or not one day, but you may have somebody on the team. In this case, my captain was a good example. You go learn the politics of going on in this area. We had a PSYOPs, 3-man PSYOPs team attached to us. Hey, I want you to go talk to all the schools. I want you to meet the school principals, the superintendents. That's your area, and you get to know that area. My engineers, hey, let's do a route survey. Let's get to know all the bridges. Let's get to know all the highways. Let's get to know all the ports. Let's get to know all the, if you have railways or rail yards, let's study that area. And then a big portion of it is, since it was just us, let's go meet the police. Let's go meet the military. Well, in Haiti, there wasn't any military. There was just the police that was there. But we go down there, and we had a police chief. He had his staff. We had 85 police officers in this city. We had 25 over in this other city. We had 15 in this other city. And you just start organizing and
building this network.
That's your immediate network. And that's the people that are part of the government, right? And then you go, well, who if you really want to know what's going on in an area like Haiti, believe it or not, they had AT&T and MCI, and you think of the old telecommunications systems and the switchboards. Yeah, they had that guy.
Okay.
There's somebody at a switchboard that can hear
everything. Yeah.
Everything. And if he hears the right stuff, call this number.
Yeah.
And he was one of my first guys. Recruited him. Really, the trick about recruiting, and this followed through also in Afghanistan, was I didn't really want people to know that he was calling me. Go call the police chief and then have him send somebody. So it's the whole unconventional warfare. When you're in Cold War time, you have cutouts, right? You don't. Your actual guy giving the intel, it's better off he doesn't know who he's passing the information off to. It's all that keeping it cellularized, compartmentalized, I think is the right compartmentalized. And I just went into that mode. Oh, well, I don't really want him talking to me directly, but here's your guy that you feed. If you find something, contact them. And usually, since I didn't know at the time Creole, and I didn't really know French that well down in Haiti, so I used the informants, our pay, because we didn't go down there, unlike in Afghanistan, where now we're smart enough to know about bringing in Terps that you can use. We were paying it out of it for our own pocket, and we tried to get anybody that spoke English.
Okay.
Later on, we did get a guy from the 82nd Airborne. He did know Creole. He was a PFC. Turned out to be great, but it took him a good month to get up to speed. Because even he's like, I haven't spoke Creole in 15 years.
Yeah.
But that was one of the things I also learned was as an intel guy, if I'm to do my job, next time you ask me to do this, I can't be sharing a Terp. I can't be sharing somebody. I need to have one dedicated to what I'm doing to be able to go out and meet these people or develop this network. And that was one of the first things I did in Afghanistan. I was the team sergeant of ODA 981. Our call sign was Python. But I had a dual role. I didn't really have an intel guy on my team. So I've kind of was fulfilling the role on my team. But then we didn't really have one on one of the other teams either. They didn't have an intel guy, so they were always kind of, asking me to go along with them. And then we had a warrant at our B team, and he stayed in Kandahar area for about a month. And then for whatever reason, he actually just went to the major. Our B team commander was a major, and he asked to go to Bagram. He thought that he was just he was more of an analyst and less of a collector. And in the role we were there at, we're still on the front line. I told the major, I said, I'm not the analyst. I said, I'm the guy that's going to go out and get it.
Yeah.
Right. I don't, but Phil, you've got to do. So I ended up, just by de facto, you're the only one there. You end up doing both. But I always, when I first got, I'm like, no, I'm not the analyst. I'm here to gather it up and report it. I'm here to do that intel report every day, get you the information. I'm here to brief the guys whenever we're doing something. That's what I figure we need to do. Mm-hmm. And but when we got there, you didn't really know who was who. You didn't know, it was that you had to question your information. Mm-hmm. I was very much under that, and I think I wrote this down on your prerequisite. I am not a fan of electronic eavesdropping or relying upon that as your only source. Mm-hmm. Signal intelligence, mm-hmm. I should say. I'm not a big fan of that. I maybe if I'd gotten more exposure to it, I'd be better, but I hit too many dry holes because of it. Here's a target. These guys are here. You go out there.
And then they got smart as well, so they're saying false intel is very easy to...
Yeah. Well, the guy, one of ours, and this is a funny story I could tell you on it. Right there in Kandahar City, we're not alone. There's the other guys, the other governmental agencies.
Sure.
And in April, we had gone out. My particular element, my Python element, 5 Americans, about 30 or 40 Afghans. We had gone out 3 nights in a row. And main reason because something had happened earlier, and the major said, "You got some targets? Because I'm tired of us being the target. We need to go on the offense." And so we took down 3 places, and all of a sudden the other governmental agency guys kind of knocked on, because remember, we're National Guard. That was the other thing. We showed up replacing 5th Group, and those guys that were right next door, they didn't really talk to us for a little while because they heard, well, those guys are just National Guard, and we're still fighting the war, and whatever and then all of a sudden we started getting busy, and then can we come on the next?
Yeah, now they want in.
Can we come along? We just want to watch.
They realized the experience was.
So I brought them on one, and then the floodgates opened.
Yeah.
And then so I brought them on one, and they showed them how we could, how we operated, and it wasn't nothing more than just a standard raid. Left security, right security, assault team. I'm the team sergeant. I'll be over here. My rule of thumb, and I live by this day. I got an SF because I don't think we should ever be the man in the door. I'm there to teach you to be the man in the door.
Yes.
Sure. Okay. And I don't speak your language. I don't know anything about this country. We're at the closest we're going to be is 3rd or 4th, right? And we very much followed this, and we rehearsed it with them. And we get over on this particular one, CIA came up and said, "We got a signal intelligence hit. It's in this guy's there every day. You got to hit it. You got to hit this place." Go over there, drive around the area, actually dressed all up, in my Toyota Tacoma so nobody can see it. We drive around the area. We okay, this is a big, we could probably do this with 30 or 40 guys, but, this is a big deal. So we went and got the Kandahar police chief in on it. And I think we ended up with 400 people, outer perimeter, inner perimeter, assault team, and then we got the tag-alongs from the agency guys. They want to come along and watch, and everything's going perfect. And I'm about 25 yards away, watching this door, and here comes this assault team. They come in, and we had practiced this earlier that evening, but never used live demo. We would just kind of go boom, and then the guys are running through the door. So we get there that night, and we've got everybody set up. And we got a lot of compliments from the Afghans on our setup and how we were managing 400 people and all that. And then they also told me, well, we probably could have done it with a lot less. And I was like, oh, yeah, I know we did, but everybody wanted a piece of the pie.
Yeah.
But we're there, and I'm in the CP watching it. And demo team goes up, and it's a water charge. If you guys are familiar with water charges, I think we even just IV back, right?
Okay.
Go up.
Shook your team.
Go up there, and the Afghans are first, and I've got 2 Americans up there. Marco is one of them. He's placing the water charge, and then he comes back 10 feet or so and sets off the water charge, and there goes the assault team running off all the way around the corner. It's like, what the?
Where are they going?
Yeah. Because we'd never practiced with live demo. So when they heard the explosion, they thought it was coming from the inside.
Yes.
And of course now we're doing the crazy American, no, get back. And of course very quickly they did regroup and then went in. And I just remember, it's one of those hilarious moments.
Yeah.
What were they thinking?
It is hilarious. That no one got hurt.
No one got hurt.
No one got hurt. But if someone did get hurt,
you're like,
it's a shitstorm.
Yeah.
But yeah, that led to a completely dry hole.
Oh, really?
And
even after that?
Right after we left, of course, the guy's there. I'm like, it's a graveyard. That's what we busted into. There was a courtyard that was really just a graveyard.
Oh.
And the guy was going there to make his daily calls. So that's what I'm leery about SIGINT hits, is use it to get contact, but then you need to have eyes on. You need to have that human intelligence going that this guy is here, and here, or I know him to be at this place. I know him to, because we had another one where joint operation, I know we want to go on one topic, but I did have, we had 4 guys get KIA from what we anticipate to this day. I will, in my mind, it was the ammo cache that had been booby trapped. A whole stack of ammunition, and EOD team with our one SF guy had gone up to actually take the stack up and then go, and they were going to set it up, get rid of it, right? Demo it, right? And it was booby trapped, and all 4 of them got killed. One guy survived, and that had happened. And about a month later, my network paid off. Right, and I shouldn't say my network, our Intel network that we had paid off, and it started coming in about, well, they're bragging about this guy, his son at this gas station, and it's right where we turned off to go into this valley. There was a gas station right there, and his son was starting to brag about it. Okay, and
turned around.
It's been a month now, so yeah, he's starting to let it fly.
Yeah.
So we're like, the other team, the other ODA was 984. It was their medic that got killed. So we gave them the gas station. And where the father lived was in the city. And my team took the father's residence. And so we were supposed to hit him at the same time. And 84 hit them. And the son was there. We rounded him up. Didn't kill him. He just gave up. We hit the father's house. And the funny story about that story was, this is still early on in combat things, and even Jorge, who had been in Bosnia and Kosovo, was still under the mindset that I gotta carry as many magazines as I can.
Sure.
And I had already started to go, basic load's enough. Mm-hmm. I got my vehicle.
Yeah.
I got cases of magazines already loaded and frags and everything. And if I can get to the vehicle, we got our resupply. So I don't need to carry 14 magazines on me anymore. So even I was, 7, 2, 4, 6, 1 in the weapon, right? And Jorge hadn't gotten to go out on any of the trips yet, and he really wanted to go. So I said, well, hey, we're going to come on in, get you on this one. Jorge, I forgot to mention, is only about 5'7".
14 mags.
Yeah. full 3, 6, 9, 12, 15 maybe even. I don't know. One of those chest rigs that went all the way across. And we were going to park one of those up armor Humvees next to a wall, and him and Scott, along with 3 Afghans, were going to scale the top of the up armored Humvee, get up on top of the wall, and then go secure the far side, right? And Afghans, how much do they weigh? 120 nothing, plus there are maybe 3 magazines. We pull up, they pull over the side. It's a 10-foot wall. I mean, but those Afghans, they were one after another. They were up and taking off running. They were gone. They were heading to their position. And Scott's 6'3", so he didn't have any trouble getting over there. And then came Jorge. Again, nothing happened and nobody got hurt. So to me, it's one of those funniest things in my mind, watching him trying to jump up to get to, and finally one of them, the Afghans, came back, and with the help of them, both of them got him up. And we're just on the other side of the road, just our heads bowed, and just chuckling, trying not to make too much noise.
Little legs swinging back and forth.
And in our case, the dad wasn't home. He had actually left that day and went to Pakistan for a dental visit, so I missed him. But this is how the Afghans work and how we worked at that time. The son that we rounded up, we didn't take him in to the Americans. We had the Afghans hold on to him. And that particular Afghan militia, or that general I was working with, had him. And I knew the father would ask about him. And so we just kind of set up a meet. Yeah, come on in and talk to us. And he never left.
Come on in.
Come on in and talk to us. And yeah, it was nice talking to you. Do you mind waiting in that room over there?
Hotel California, right on the top.
As soon as he moved over in the other room, me and the general made eye contact, and it's like, yeah, that guy's going to jail. Yeah, okay, And my way of working out with the Afghans was they actually had a structure. They had interrogators. Mm-hmm. They had guys that would take them, and I would visit them, and they knew about the torture thing, and they weren't really big into the torture, but this guy would give me a folder completely of all the minutes of all the interviews of everything he had.
Wow.
And he would call me and say, yes, now he's ready. Take him in. And that became what I would do. I would round guys up on raids, let the Afghans have them, let that specific interrogator from the Afghans have them for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. And then when, if not, then we'd try to flip them.
Yeah.
Right. Treat them nice, try to get them to give us the information and now be part of our network, not necessarily, always treat them with a knife to their throat.
Yeah, of course.
You're going to get rid of them. So yeah.
That's very interesting, though. That's one of the most interesting parts to me, because it's things you seldom hear about, is interrogations or gathering intelligence in that manner, especially with human intelligence. It's not something that's typically talked about openly. It's been one of the most interesting things for me to hear about, at the very least.
So I know we want to talk about Berlin. So let's talk about Berlin, but we got to come back to July 1st, 2002, because we were probably the first unit that got reported hitting a wedding party.
Okay.
And, CNN blasted out that we'd killed 200 people.
Oh.
And all that. That happened July 1st, 2002. But I can tell you my side of the story and how that all, and the intel part of what happened afterwards.
Sure.
I actually got called before a whole investigative briefing and had to give my
testimony
and all before that.
So what happened there? We can stay on Afghanistan.
Yeah, okay, let's stay on Afghanistan. Yeah. So on that one, July 1st, this was a big operation. Third group wanted to go into northern, trying to remember if it was Helmand province or if it was Kandahar province. Deir Wood was the name of the village, and high value target, Taliban guy being located there supposedly. And it was a big deal for third group. They've been putting in, SR teams for like a month, trying to see if they could spot the guy being there.
Reconnaissance, right?
Yeah, reconnaissance. Halo teams going in and setting up for 3 or 4 days at a time. And
okay.
They were planning a pretty big operation, and how we got involved in was it kind of came down to, well, you guys really have a lot of Afghans that you work with, and can we borrow about 100 of them?
Big operation.
And
yeah.
So, there were 5 ODAs and there were 2 SEAL platoons. So then plus our 100 Afghans. And what they really wanted all us to do was to set up a blocking force on the north and of the south, to try to keep any of the squirters from heading either of those 2 directions. Now they could have headed into the mountains, but we weren't really going to set up to do that. You can only cover so much ground. And so third group was hitting 4 or 5 locations in Deir Wood. The 2 SEAL platoons had their own targets 2 kilometers away from where the third group was at. They had a ground force moving in by vehicles, whole ground convoy moving in, and then an air assault element, part of it coming in the next morning. Pretty big operation, the biggest one that I had been in to that date. Up until that point, I had done everything had been with just my team and in Kandahar.
Okay.
And now this is, going into Kandahar and doing rehearsals and all of that stuff, and missions changing multiple times, and But what I do remember about it was I get on the helicopter. We had so many people on those MH-47s because Task Force 160 was flying it, and they were reared, geared for aerial flight and fueling, and we took off and we never landed. And we were supposed to initially land around midnight, and we were just, circling at our release point and just getting refueled. and just circling and just circling. And what had happened was the ground convoy had come into the village. They went to the primary LZ. Turned out they couldn't get across the river because it was, I guess, higher than they thought it was going to be. So they were trying to, it took them longer to get across the river. And then they finally get the LZ secured. And once the LZ was going to be secured, then they were going to call us in on helicopters. Well, before they could even get the LZ secured, the villagers decided to start, which is never a good idea, which is start shooting at our AC-130 gunships.
Oh, yeah.
That's never very bright.
Self-critiquing.
Not good.
So we went through, I was told, I looked at one time, I got out and looked out the window, and I could see it. We went through 6 AC-130s. They kept Winchester, another one would come in. Winchester, another one would come in. Winchester, another one would come in. We finally came into the LZ, 4 o'clock in the morning. I come off the back of the thing. Oh, and I forgot to tell, what am I doing there? I almost didn't get to go. I literally got told, you've been on everything we've done to date. Let somebody else go.
Yeah.
Right.
Let someone else have fun.
And I was like, well, surely you need something. And they're like, well, they might need help with the prisoners. Hey, I'm an intel guy. I can help with the prisoners. Well, we're also, and we were probably one of the first, I always say this, I hate to say it, but even back then, I was using women, Afghan women. And we brought an Afghan woman on the helicopter with us because we wanted to interrogate and question the Afghan women, right? So I hired a local, she was a widow of an Afghan soldier that had gotten killed. And are you okay with taking your burqa off? Because you can't wear that burqa getting on the helicopter. Took it right off, gets on the helicopter. We get out there. So I've got an Afghan commander watching her, and I'm with this other Afghan commander, and he knows this area. I mean, this is Kandahar. He's from that area. And me and him were going to, kind of do the fingerprints, the pictures, and then do the initial interrogations, right? And we get there. We had to wait for the sun to come up because when we first landed, it was completely, one of those nights where you're not seeing nothing.
Yeah.
And I'm bumping into stuff. It's so dark.
Yeah.
Finally, it starts getting a little light, and it's like, Phil, don't go over that way. And I'm like, why? Because it got a little nasty over there. I'm like, well, how many are you counting? Well, I counted 23. It's like, well, maybe I need to go over and get some pictures. Yeah, there's some villagers over there. That's not a good idea. Might piss them off a little bit. Yeah, okay, I can wait. Right? So we didn't go. In fact, we started going over there and then kind of saw a wall of villagers kind of walking out. Yeah, maybe let's not go over there now. It's maybe not a good time. So we went over to the prisoner collection point where the teams were bringing in, guys that they were rounding up in the places that they had visited. And we probably had about 25 guys sitting there. And one thing I had learned by July was this Afghan commander I'd been working with for 6 months now. And if he could tell me this is the guy we need to talk to, that's the guy we need to talk to. But if he told you that guy is just a freaking farmer and don't mess with him, then I'd believe him, right? So we went over there and we quickly realized that none of those guys really were soldiers or Taliban or anything else, and they weren't. We only ended up, the third group guy, the warrant officer that was in charge of the interrogations, he thought 3 or 4 of them were worth bringing in, so he brought 3 or 4 of them in. But we quickly kind of disengaged ourselves from that interrogation that they were doing and focused on going and getting all the village elders. And we put out word and said, yeah, we're going to meet under this tree over here. We'd like to talk to you about what happened. And so with that Afghan commander, his name was General Gulale, me and him went over there and with an interpreter. And next thing I know, me being an enlisted guy, I always like to tell this because, regular Army people just don't understand what we do for a living. Here, I actually got up and went and talked to the 3rd Group Major. I'm like, hey, I got the entire village council over here. Do you want to come sit in on this, or you want to? You think I can handle it? Hey, I'm kind of busy. You think, Phil, can you handle it? Yeah, sure, I got it. So I go over there, and I just do, just start talking with them. But I'm also smart enough to know what's your name, what position are you? Oh, you're the police chief. Oh, you're the mayor. Oh, you're the in charge of this head coffee shop over here. You're the village elder of this tribe. Oh, what tribe are y'all? That type of thing. You start getting their statements. And, well, what happened last night? I never said anything about what we did. I just tell me what happened in your own words. And so you just start taking statements down, basically what it was. And that turned out to be important enough to where I got called in for an investigation because they read my intel report. But because the next day after we left, so I actually left that day. The helicopter came in. Phil, your job's done. Let's go back to Kandahar. Got back to Kandahar next morning. Hey, come watch and look what's on the news. And there's CNN saying that we killed 200 people and had a wedding.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
and there was no wedding.
So yeah,
there were ZSU 23-2s on top of rooftops.
So what is what CNN saying first? Can you dive into what they were saying and then what actually happened?
So CNN basically said that we hit a wedding party and that 200 people had been killed. And if you've ever been deployed to Afghanistan, even back then we were told there's Afghan math, right? You got to take that number and divide by 10 because usually they're multiplying by 10.
Sure.
Right. And this is a good case of it. CNN's there to get a story. Mm-hmm. They are not on the side of the American military. They could care less about telling the American military side of the story.
Absolutely.
At all.
Yeah.
And when you got villagers running out and, they got my kid, they got my wife, they got this, they hit I don't know where the story of the wedding party comes up, but at that particular one it did. And then I heard that multiple times later on about, us hitting wedding parties. And
sure.
Yes, there was collateral damage from these buildings. But in my statements, it was to the effect, I was like, so you said here that you told your guys to stop shooting at us. Yes, we told them to not shoot at the Americans. Told them to not shoot at or told them to stop? Well, we told them to stop shooting at it. So your guys knew they were shooting at our aircraft. Yes, they knew. Okay, well, that's not a wedding party. That's not celebratory fire. I've got your statement of it. And of course, you wanted to hear about technology. What are all those AC-130s got?
Tons of sensors.
They got
cameras,
everything.
Cameras.
Yeah.
So essentially, my statement probably made a small piece of truth in there, but
sure.
Cameras.
Yeah.
And I found out about that later on. Months later, I went to K2 when I was on my way back to Fort Campbell. And, hey, you need to meet the flight crew. They were on this thing, and I got over there, and it turns out that they were based out of K2, and they were dying to talk to somebody that had been on the ground.
Yeah.
I was there. Kind of took a few pictures too, and then I was kind of curious. Well, whatever happened to that investigation? Because I went in, and for me, the funniest part about the investigation was I had been there. Now it's mid-July, so the beard was so long, I caught myself braiding it. And after that, July 1st. It's now July, and we decided that we actually kind of should cool off for a couple of weeks. Maybe let this media thing, So I actually went in. I'm like, look, everybody on my team's already gotten. We were given 5-day passes. You had a choice, really going to Turkey or going to Qatar, and I could get to Qatar a lot faster. So I opted to go, and we had a contact at Qatar who could get me off the installation and get me into my only prerequisite was I wanted a hotel with a swim-up bar. And so there's a major there, and it helps to know some officers.
Sure,
He snuck me off the base and got me into a hotel, and the very first thing I did is went and trimmed my beard. I didn't cut it, but I trimmed it because it was just way out of control. And I even got a little bit of a trim on the haircut, just cleaned it up, and then spent 3 days at the pool, as much time as I could drinking, and then came back and showed up, and they're like, Phil, they want you at Kandahar Airfield to go through they're doing that briefing from their wedding. And I'd known a couple of other guys who had gotten called in already, so I went in there. And again, still it goes back to the wearing civilian clothes. I got a full beard. My hair now is really long.
Yeah.
And I sit down, and I can see they're all reading my intelligence report. And it'd been a month now. I actually had, hey, can I borrow that and preview it, so I can refresh my memory? And but the very first thing they asked me, who are you? I mean, it's like
he's a secret school guy.
I'm Phil Stone, member of 19th Special Forces. And you could just see these admirals and generals, and they're from Army, Navy, Air Force. This is an enlisted guy? Are you kidding? We have enlisted guys out doing this stuff? I mean, even on that trip to Qatar, the whole time I'm flying, everybody thought I was a CIA guy because, you're wearing civilian clothes. You're flying in civilian clothes. And so, hey, do you need to call anybody? Yeah, as a matter of fact, I do. You really got the good 5-star treatment.
Absolutely. Well, they're probably too scared of you to ask questions.
At least you trimmed your beard for the.
I did trim my beard.
Yeah. Your time in Afghanistan is a wild one. A little bit of a cowboy story there.
Definitely.
I'm sure that you had some good times but some struggles along the way. But let's peel it back to what you were saying about Berlin. I'm very curious about the time that you were doing in West and South Germany.
Yeah, well, it's in Berlin is actually in East,
Berlin, okay,
in East Germany at the time, and Berlin was split up into 4 sectors. You had a Russian sector, and then on the NATO side, you had the Brits and you had the U.S. So that was kind of split up between those countries. But it's all inside East Germany.
Yeah,
hundreds of miles inside of East Germany. And in the 80s, there was a unit, special forces unit there that got declassified. We were just talking about it, trying to figure out what year it was declassified. But it had lasted all through the 70s, 80s, and 90s. They changed the name of it because it had gotten out a little bit. But then, anyway, the program lasted all the way up till 1994. And then when the Cold War kind of dissolved is when that unit dissolved. But it was known as Det A or Detachment A, and it was about a company-sized element of special forces guys that were stationed there permanently. And it was relaxed grooming standards and 100% Spycraft.
Wow.
Dead letter drops, personal meetings, trailing, literally getting an assignment on a folder and saying, here's your guy to go track all day and report on where he went. And, you and your team or teams, if it involved that many, you went out and followed a guy around and took pictures and kept track of his log and all that stuff. But it was also getting us ready for a Cold War scenario where you're in a city and you have to operate effectively, even as an operator, by yourself or in small teams. So one of the things we did and I was not stationed there full time. I was not over there on a 3-year tour. I was lucky enough. I was at Fort Devens, Massachusetts, and I always blame it back on the team sergeant. He set it up. He's like, we need to get trained in this. We need to go over and go through this program that these guys are offering. And the program was basically about 4 weeks long, and it included an exercise at the end of it. But you went over there, and from the very beginning, it started 6 months prior to you ever getting deployed on that particular operation. And back in the day, it was not always common for guys to get on relaxed grooming standards, but for me, and the story behind it, unfortunately, it was right after I graduated Ranger School. So I show up with my freshly shaved graduation haircut.
Of course.
And got given orders to go on relaxed grooming standards. And I'm like, really now? I'm starting from scratch, right? But I was very happy about that. I remember going into one of the supply rooms and going through picking out civilian clothes to wear, to take, because they didn't want us just bringing our own. Trying to get European clothes. And you have in your mind, what am I going to do? And then also, you got to remember, you're going over there as an American into Berlin, inside of East Germany.
Yeah.
As a special forces guy, you're not supposed to be there.
Not at all.
At all.
Yeah.
So even if you're there, there's U.S. Army there, but you're not supposed to tell anybody you're there. They're not supposed to know you're there. When we went over there, we went in sterile uniforms. We had to fly U.S. aircraft.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember our team, we're all relaxed grooming standards, but at the time we were just wearing the OD green jungle fatigues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's completely sterile.
Completely sterile.
So guys probably look like buffoons. Just relaxed grooming,
exactly.
greens on.
But at the same time, we all thought we were cool. We had our big, long handlebar mustaches. Because mustaches were in. Beards were not, but mustaches were in.
Sure.
Yeah.
I remember going over and landing in Berlin, and it's a small concern that the American Dead A was based out of, and they had a classroom that we went into. And from the very beginning, it was just fieldcraft, spycraft, everything you've read about. It was Jason Bourne stuff.
Yeah,
really. And at the time, y'all will show, Jason Bourne didn't come out in the movies until the 2000s. Robert Ludlum wrote it in the 80s.
Yeah.
So I'm reading Jason Bourne novels, and now here I am going to Dead A and actually living it. So I'm living the dream.
Was there a lot of crossover with what you learned?
Oh,
versus
absolutely.
Was,
I mean, especially the use of commo and how you pass information back and forth, or how part of your thing was to go in and you're going to get, like in our field exercise, they broke us into 3-man teams. So me and one guy on my team and a guy that was attached to us. Jim was the guy on my team I knew. We got put up in a hotel, separate rooms, but right off the bat, we had a schedule. Hey, we have these dead letter drops we have to check. We have to service them. And we had 3 of them set up. And if there's a signal on a particular building or whatever, then there's a message waiting for you. And if there is a message, then you got to go get it and then decode it. And this is the days of Morse code and all of that stuff, and decoding a message was very manual. It wasn't just spit it into the computer and let it decrypt it, right? But it was, one of our exercises was to actually kidnap somebody and process that, take fingerprints, take photographs, verify his identification, and then go to this location in Berlin, and you're going to be on this side of the tunnel, and on the other side of the tunnel is going to be somebody else, and you're going to hand him off. We're doing all those types of things, and it was just hysterical.
Let me just ask you, how are you feeling during this? I mean, obviously you're reading the Jason Bourne novels at the time. Are you feeling that whilst you're doing it, or where's that adrenaline at for you?
The adrenaline was definitely there in the fact that, because I spoke German pretty well.
Okay.
And I was feeling like I could get by pretty good on my own.
Sure.
Plus, I was young. I mean, I was not even 24 at the time, I don't think.
So you're invincible at this point.
And what?
You're invincible at this point.
I'm invincible. I've, got my Ranger tab now. So I got my, I got the whole, we didn't even have an SF tab at the thing. I don't think they were out yet. But no, I hear one of the stories, and you guys will always like to hear the fun stuff from it. But I mentioned that kidnapping we had to do. They're like the city of Dallas, for example. There's a lake, White Rock Lake. They have a similar lake in the center of Berlin that's used for recreation. And next to that lake is a forest. And there's roads that drive through this forest. And our, message that we got was go to this spot and link up with other guys from your team. And so I show up at this particular spot with Jim, and Woody shows up riding a bike, and Woody is just like, oh my God, you wouldn't believe what I've been doing. He has a backpack on, and in his backpack are 5 submachine guns. And he's riding around Berlin on a bicycle with 5 submachine guns in his backpack. Thank God I linked up with you guys, because I'm ready to hand this stuff off.
Yeah, I bet.
So, absolutely.
And so we're trying to figure out, we got to do an ambush. This guy's going to be in a car. We got to take out the driver, but we got to capture him alive. How do you get the car to stop, right? Without really wrecking it.
Or killing the driver.
Or, and this is really an exercise. So, there's still some reality coming back here. This is not real life, so we got to, and this is being used by civilians. This is a park. There's people coming by, and, this is where people think we always had the headsets and the walkie-talkie. No, we just had handheld walkie-talkies. And I remember we sent somebody down the road, we sent Woody down the road and said, tell us when the vehicle's coming. It'll give us enough time. And we had propped a fairly sized log up. And it was just enough. When the right vehicle came by, we were going to tip it down and block the road and force them to stop. And of course, this car comes, and we hear, it's a car, and we, it was the wrong car. We didn't get the whole message. We dropped the log. Here comes these Germans. They stop, and it's not the guy. And what was so funny of it to me was, I speak fluent German, but my commo guy, Sly, runs out, and he looks very German. He's 6'4", German, blonde hair. He looks like a German, but he didn't speak any German. He walks out there and he goes, "Military exercise, mistake for you." And I'm like, oh, that's the best you can come up with?
Mistake for
As
you.
we're trying to pick the log up and get it out of the way so they can, and they, of course, they're like, oh, okay, like that explains everything.
Yeah. Sure,
And they
surely.
drive off, and then the very next car that came by, we dropped the log, and we take out the driver, and we got the guy. And but I was just like, military exercise, mistake for you?
Yeah.
Really?
Of all things.
Why didn't you let me talk to him?
Yeah.
I think I could have said something a little bit more intelligent.
Send the guy who speaks German, maybe. Yeah.
But it was very fun because, like that guy right there, we had to take fingerprints of him. We had to take photographs of him. And that was stuff that I'd all learned in O&I school as part of, the identification photographs. How do you take the right types of fingerprints? How do you read those fingerprints? And then how do you send that type of information back in that day through Morse code?
Yeah, that too.
Because you can, but it takes a while to encrypt it.
Sure.
And but we did all that, and then got the verification back that was the right guy, and then that's when we took him over to. The next night, took him to the tunnel and handed him off.
Oh, man.
That definitely some Jason Bourne stuff.
That is.
There was some good Jason Bourne. Now the fun stuff that you might want to hear about too is that there was some downtime.
Okay.
And one of my 2 stories on that was, lots of American girls coming over during the summer months, touring during their college tours.
Interesting. Even during that time.
And even during the 80s.
Oh.
And it was always nice to be able to walk up to the bar, and you'd see this flock of American girls that are trying to get the bartender to get them a drink, and I would just walk up and I'm Bia Bitta, and hey, how's it going, girls? You guys need anything? And then just turn around and rattle off what you needed, what they wanted. Oh, you live here? And we had cover stories. That was the other thing is I'm 23 years old. What's your cover story? What are folks going to believe?
What was it?
What we had come up with was that Springfield Armory is in Massachusetts. And that was our cover story. We'd all been in the Army 4 years and gotten out and gone to work for Springfield Armory, and we were over here looking at H&K.
Oh.
Interesting. That's
Smart.
a great cover story.
I thought it was a good cover.
Very
story.
smart.
A little bit of,
And it gives a little bit of, you still get that cowboy
that's
element.
why I know
Yeah.
weapons. That's
Yeah.
why I know about the Army.
A little bit of truth.
But yet, I'm over.
Yeah.
Why are you over here in Germany?
And that's something that they teach as well, right?
Oh, yeah.
Incorporate a little bit of truth so that you can fall
Half-truths.
back on that.
Yeah, always a half truth.
That makes sense. That's so interesting.
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
And I bet you, whilst you were telling this story too, like what's going on internally, you're just like, oh yeah.
I did enjoy my time over there.
I bet.
So,
Yeah.
fantastic.
Well, I'm curious. So you're performing operations out there during a time where you're not supposed to be there.
Yeah.
What are the consequences if you do get caught? And did anybody get caught?
We did not have anybody get caught.
Okay. Thankfully.
Thankfully, we weren't really trying to go into East Berlin.
Okay.
We were not trying to actively go into East Germany.
Okay.
What we were doing was actively taking photos and notes and sketches of areas.
Sure.
And so you could have got, but we were doing that from the safe side, right? Interestingly enough, I thought our, cumulative exercise was, come back and as a team come up with how you can get into East Berlin covertly. So,
and there were ways, I'm sure.
there's ways, but you have to realize you can't do it where they realize you got in.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the trick. When you go, I'll go
Okay.
through the sewers. Well, no, they got mines in the sewer. They've got
Yeah.
sewers blocked off. They got this blocked off. So there were some. I was trying to remember. I always remember. So we were one of 4 teams that got to go through this training. I always remember what the SEAL team came up with because there was a SEAL team with us going through this, and they were going to get a helicopter, get 4 cadavers, fly the helicopter, crash land it, and have the 4 bodies in the helicopter. And I was like, that's kind of stupid, but at the same time, that might work. you know?
Yeah. It depends on how
But-
dead they are, I guess.
Depends, but ours was much more simpler. It was more or less going into an area of the sewers that we had identified that were not mined and were not clogged off.
Okay. Yeah.
And because it was, if you've ever seen the old pictures of Checkpoint Charlie, it's just not just a wall that's 15 feet high. It's a whole 100 yards of minefield.
Just no man's
and then
land.
another wall, and then roving dogs and
Yeah.
checkpoints and towers.
Yeah. So why no paratroop? So why no parachuting in?
Parachute would leave a trail.
Yeah.
They got guys watching at all times, I'm sure.
Well, it was just, you were trying to come in somewhere where you didn't leave any sort of trace.
Sure.
So how do you do that? It's not that you couldn't parachute in, but you'd have to do something with that chute to hide
Yeah.
where it came in.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So hence why they came up with the helicopter idea.
Yeah.
If they come to the site and there's 4 people and there's 4 bodies, and
They're just going to close it out.
Just assume that it was a crash landing, and
Yeah.
everybody died on the crash.
Oh, yeah, points for creativity.
That doesn't make sense that they're trying to get into an area everybody else is trying to get out, but anyway.
Yeah, well, that's fair enough.
And you'd say that experience definitely helped prepare you for Afghanistan and your future service.
Yeah, even later on, the whole thing with how do you establish that? It goes back to establishing an intelligence network. When you go to talk to people, if we could cover this real quick on it, one of the things I really found out and learned the most from all those other things and that bled into Afghanistan is, when you're going in to talk to people to try to find out information, you know what you want. You want to just come in there and you want to ask, where's the Taliban? Where's Al Qaeda? Where's ISIS? Tell me where the bad guys are. And I watched Army people do that and get nothing in return. And it's like you can't just talk to people by leading off that way.
Yeah.
You have to establish a rapport with them. And one of my, to give that point, one of the teams, our scuba team, great team. I'd served with. I had gone on I got to fill in for, they needed, I'm also a diver too. So got to fill in and got to know those guys on a trip to Korea. And they asked me, they said, Phil, we're going down to spend Bulldog. Can you come with us? And I said, sure, I'd be happy to. So I went, and I'd been down to spend Bulldog before as well. But I went down there with them and I watched Mark. I'm just there observing. And he's the captain. It's his team. John, he's the team sergeant. It's their deal, right? And an hour and a half later, we had nothing. We've been sitting there just asking questions, and nothing. He's not getting any. They're not talking to him.
Yeah.
And it was just his delivery was all about, well, tell me where the Taliban's at.
Mm-hmm.
That type of style. So finally, Mark, I can just see he's kind of getting a little disgusting. He's not getting anything. And Mark, do you mind if I ask him a couple of questions? No, Phil, go right ahead. I didn't ask him about the Taliban or Al Qaeda. I asked him about himself.
Mm-hmm.
What's your family? Oh, I hear that you got a wife and 4 kids. And how long have you been here? Oh, you're in the Akash. There's so many sub tribes of the Pashtuns, and I heard you're part of the sub tribe. Oh yeah. And so I just started talking to him about personal stuff, and then about, well, wait a minute, you've got a police force here. You've got the border patrol. Tell me a little bit more about your own internal folks. And within 30 minutes, the guy started spilling his guts about all the freaking Taliban and Al Qaeda activity. And Mark just looks over at me and goes, "How do you do that?" And by then, this is 9 months into the tour, and I kind of went, well, honestly, I feel like I've had a lot of practice now. But I learned early on, especially going through an interpreter, because I even after 9 months, I don't speak Pashto, right? I don't speak Arabic. I've never gotten trained in those. Now, being an SF and being one of the reasons why I'm sure you guys have heard this, like a lot of guys, they test us for your aptitude. And do you even have the ability to pick up a language? And very much to a lot of people's amazement is when I tell them it's all about, if you're a musician, if you can pick up music, if you can pick up notes, you can learn a language, because it's all about sound and tone. And those aptitude tests they give you are about sound. Can you differentiate between this sound and that sound? Can you hear the distinct tone between this and this? And if you're musically inclined, you definitely can. Now, I know some tone deaf people, and they can't learn language either. So yeah, and even when my tour there, speaking with an interpreter, I got to be where I could have him ask the question, and I'd already be writing it down because I could understand the answer. I've been there that
based
long.
off of inflection.
Just based off of inflection, and I'd heard it before, and now I've been there long enough to where I've heard that. And,
sure.
The numbers, the times of the day, certain words and
there's also body language and cues that
body
you're
language
up.
is a big thing when you're interrogating people. And how I got the most day-to-day skill training, cross-training on that was, and this gets into what a National Guard team can kind of bring to the table. One of my guys was a police officer, and he could read people. And I would have him. He wouldn't listen. He wouldn't ask the questions. I would just have him sit next to me and watch the guy, right, and tell me what he saw.
Mm-hmm.
And then after just a few sessions, you start picking up on it.
Yes.
Such as the fidgety hands, the not always looking away, never looking at me in the eye. Always being nervous,
scratching the nose, eyes twitching,
very fidgety. And that helped a lot. But, in my National Guard team, just real quick, I had a guy, this is 2001, 2002. My executive officer on my team, who was a captain, so I had 2 captains, which is odd. There's a story behind that. So this guy that was my XO, he wasn't really my XO. He was our battalion physician's assistant. But prior to becoming the battalion physician's assistant, he had been in E7 18 Delta.
Oh, okay.
On my team. And we've been in Haiti together. So we get over to Afghanistan. He's in battalion, and he's stuck being the battalion surgeon. And he knows I'm actually short both medics. I don't even have a medic because one of my medics is still not downrange yet. He's had to go through some medical training first. And so he went to battalion commander and said, Phil and I served in Haiti together. I was his 18 Delta. Let me go in with him. He needs a medic. He needs a XO.
Yeah.
Let me go in on his team. And so I got a PA for an XO. My senior commo man was an emergency room PA.
Oh, yeah.
So he's the only team that you ever had, somebody get shot and they yelled for the commo man.
Yeah, no
wow,
kidding.
Interesting.
Because Scott was a PA first. He was an emergency room surgeon first before he was a commo guy.
How funny is that?
So we had some really interesting skills.
So the National Guard, that does the civilian jobs pack a punch on that one.
They bring some extra weight. So anyhow.
That's impressive. Did you want to talk about the Special Forces Association a little bit, and while we close this out? 'Cause I know you did a lot of work.
Yeah,
over
so
there.
the Special Forces Association is a national association. It's global, I think. I mean, we've got some chapters. We used to have one in Iraq. We have some. What do you call those guys that are living off?
Expats?
Expats. We have some expats that are downrange, and they start up chapters in their app. But here in Texas, we've got actually 4 chapters that I know of. Local chapters. The one that we have for the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, and we actually call it the North Texas chapter because it kind of spans all of North Texas. As you can imagine, there's not really a whole lot of Green Berets. And yes, there's the VFW, there's the American Legion, great organizations. I'm a member of both of those. But if I really want to hang out with other Green Berets, the Special Forces Association is the place to do it. Prerequisites, multiple types of membership. I mean, it is like the VFW. It's a membership. It's not a 501c3 charity. It's just a fraternal order of brotherhood.
Sure.
Right. And if have been on an SF team, you've been through the Q course, you can get a regular membership. If you're been a support guy or CA or just been in the unit, you can become an associate member. So we have associate members, and then we even an auxiliary membership, right, for the women and spouses that want to belong to it. It's like, I won't say it's like the VFW, but it is a membership only where we get together. And what's our mission? It's really just to make sure people know about Special Forces and that they're still around.
Sure. So education.
It's education that, yes, they exist. Yes, I can't tell you how many times I show up and I'm wearing, and I use the term triple canopy. It's got my airborne, my Ranger tab, and my Special Forces tab. And 9 times out of 10, I walk up and I'll be wearing that pin and people go, "Oh, you're a Ranger." Yeah. There's something above that. But they don't know what it is. And they don't know they don't equate Green Beret with Special Forces. And because of the media, it's everybody's Special Forces.
Yeah, right.
Very true.
Right, very true. So Special Forces Association, we've got the green blazer, the Masters blazer. I don't know where they came up with this, but I like the color. It does kind of fit in. The Special Forces Association patch, but this is also a crest and patch that you can wear on your beret.
Okay.
So if you don't want to wear, I wear my last group that I was in. Basically I was in 10th group first, I was in 12th group, but they deactivated 12th group, and then I went over and finished up with 19th group. So all my berets are usually either 19th, 10th, or 12th.
Okay.
But I do have the option of just using this flash.
Okay.
I can put that on my beret if I want. It's supposed to mean that you're retired.
Sure.
I'm not one of these guys that now that I'm retired, I definitely say, F you, I don't care about any AR-670-1. I can do whatever the hell I want.
Yeah.
But I guess in the olden days, they still had guys that you can't do that according to you're a civilian now. You can't. Yeah, who cares? I'm a civilian.
Who cares?
You gonna write me up?
Yeah.
Like I'm one of those guys that there's even like my Bronze Star is not my DD 214. Well, aren't you going to get that? Who cares?
Yeah.
I've got the paperwork. I know. I've got my orders. I've got it all. I really don't care if it ever gets in my 214 or 215. My wife knows where it is. If you want to, make a fuss about it, but that I'm not a big fan of the whole 214. I mean, I know it serves a purpose, but it's kind of funny because nobody else even knows what it is. So only the military guys know what a 214 is.
Yeah.
And I think it's funny because I have, and you guys may not realize this. So I got a DD 214 when I got out in April of '86. And then I got activated for Haiti. So I got another one. And then I got activated for Afghanistan. So I got another one.
Yeah.
So which one do you want to see?
Yeah, I got a handful of them.
I got all of them. And it's not, when I answered that question up front, when were you in? It's not one set here to here. So there's kind of I'm an oddball when it comes to that.
That's the way it works with the Guardsmen, though. Every time you're activated. New 214.
Longer than 180 days, you get a new 214.
Yeah.
So, well, the good thing is you get it corrected a lot.
Yes. So. You could have all three and just turn them in and say combine it. Well, I mean, regardless of 214s, you had a substantial amount of service in where you got to do a broad range of different jobs, different opportunities. Quite a unique story. We haven't really delved into, Berlin. The Arctic warfare was pretty interesting as well.
Warfare,
yeah. That's pretty insane stuff. And I just got to thank you for your service.
Oh, you're welcome.
And kind of being one of those, I feel like, founding members.
Not that old. I actually do get mistaken as a Vietnam vet quite a bit.
Oh, no.
And so much. I got invited on a deer hunt last November, and was mistaken for that. And I'm, when you're young, you're like, I missed that by a generation.
Yeah.
And then as the older you get, it's like, whoa, maybe by 5 years.
Yeah, really.
So I graduated in 1977, and if you asked me when the Vietnam War was over in 1977, I would have told you 1972. Because to me, that's when the prisoners came home and we were done. It wasn't until years later. What do you mean we were still there until 75?
Yeah. Closing out.
I was telling you, I got to my team and 10th group, and Paul McFarland, I remember him to this day. Paul was in E7. Paul, when were you in Vietnam? 73. What?
Yeah.
We were out. No, I was still there, Phil. Yeah. No, really? Got there in 72, left in 73. I'm like, what? I thought we were out of there by then.
Yeah, the stuff you don't hear about, right?
But yeah, I remember Paul because he was my, when I tried out to become a ski instructor, he became my mentor and worked with me one-on-one and, made sure that I, got selected as a skiing. I'd only been skiing 2 years when I got selected as a ski instructor, and I owe it all up to Paul. And plus the fact that for 2 winters in a row, I'd spent the entire winter on a set of skis.
Yeah, you're also doing it very intensely with the military. Yeah. No breaks, no fun.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story and coming out today. This has been an incredible story. Thank you for sharing.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for your time, Phil.
Yes.
This has been the Medevac Podcast, ladies and gentlemen. If you got something out of today's episode, share it with a friend or family member. Interact with the content somehow. Leave a review if you haven't done that yet. And be sure to tune in next week for the next episode. See you guys later.
See you next time.